Hey everyone, it's Kelly the Frugal Fun Mum. Welcome to the channel and to today's video. Happy Mother's Day to everybody out there. I hope wherever you are and whatever you're doing, you have a very special day. Today's video was actually a request that someone asked to share some experiences, what it's like being the parent of a child with autism. And so I thought I'd share that with you, and some funny things that happen, some challenges that we have, and just anything else that pops into my head. So let's go. So my son was diagnosed with autism when he was 2.5 years old. I had known for quite a while that something was different, but I just kept getting told that don't worry about it, he'll talk when he's ready, he'll move when he's ready, da 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 da. You had a girl first, she was advanced for all of her stages and things, so now you've had a boy, so he'll get there when he gets there, don't pressure yourself. So it got really frustrating that this was my second child, but also I was being told, don't worry, don't worry. Not one single person said to me, if you're that concerned, go and get a second diagnosis. So that really irritated me. So when my son actually did get diagnosed, I took a little bit of pleasure, to be honest, that I was right, and told a few people, especially some of the therapists we were with, this is what happened. For them to go, oh yeah, we figured that, but we didn't want to say anything can upset you. Here's a parent who's trying to figure out why their child is so developmentally behind in some things, looking for answers, and you're like, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. So that was super frustrating. When my son was diagnosed, we got a dual diagnosis because back in the day, I'm talking like, 16 years ago, you could either go through Autism SA and the wait list was humongous and you had to pay about $700 or something, or you could get a public diagnosis like part 1 through a hospital clinician that we did do, because the pediatrician we could get through the hospital, and then you go to a private psychologist and then they give you like part 2. So yes, we got the confirmation from the children's health unit at the hospital, and then we went and followed it up with the private consultation. So that cost us about $180 out of pocket. And yes, we got our diagnosis of autism. My son has the diagnosis of mild autism, so that is equal to level 1 according to the DSM-5 scale, I think it is. Sorry, I fill out so many forms. I don't know what's what anymore. I just get handed something, get told to fill it out and hand it back again. So that's probably something as a parent in general, but also as a parent of a child with special needs, no matter what diagnosis you have, you're forever filling out forms and repeating yourself and giving information over and over again. Back when my son was diagnosed when he was 2.5, of course NDIS didn't exist back then, but where we lived there was quite a few local community programs and other support services that we were able to connect in with, so we were able to get some help and support that way, joined a couple of play groups and things like that. And it was really good for some of the groups because they didn't really focus on the autism, which tends to be the big thing. They focus on things like, oh, he needs some speech support, he needs fine motor skills, he needs to learn how to cope or be with other people. So it's really important that that's one thing, that you recognize what are your child's needs, not what their diagnosis is. Your diagnosis will help you get your NDIS funding and the support that you need, but it's how can they help you, which is also how some of the schools' funding is changing now. What are the challenges and issues that the child has that they need the support with to overcome? The diagnosis just gives you an umbrella, but underneath that umbrella is all the things that you need to think about. My son has had at least 5 education experiences with schools and learning environments. So 2 primary schools, 2 high schools and homeschooling. Each one has had its advantages and challenges, and so they've come in waves and flows. The first primary school he was at for the most of his education because we were getting really great support, and then by the time he hit grade 5, just, yeah, everything changed. We were hanging out to stay there for him to get a male teacher that took all the grade 5 students, and we were like, as soon as we can get him, we know we'll be settled and on the right path. And then some of the leadership changed and he needed to be in a position elsewhere, and the support stuff also changed. So we started grade 5 at just, yeah, like a fish out of water, and we were just struggling from day one. We moved to a new primary school to go into a specialist support unit, and that was just, I wish I never went. I'm sorry to say that, but we just struggled and struggled and struggled. There was a lot of children in there with behavioural needs, and my son just wasn't coping. And so I was getting a phone call nearly every day that either my son had witnessed something and he was upset by it and he wasn't settling well, or he'd been involved with something and so he wasn't settling well. The principal was amazing, and when I went in there for a meeting one day at the end of it and I said, I've had enough, I think I'm done, she was like, yep, I don't know what to do, I don't, yeah. So it's good to have that support with someone saying, I think you're right, because she said to me, what do you want the perfect education setting to look like? And I told her, and she was like, yeah, the system just, we can't do that for you. So then we chose to homeschool, which was quite an experience for about 12 months, but we learned a lot. My son would go part-time to some groups and activities as well as other things we did, and so I learned to connect with some other parents and things like that too. That journey was kind of short-lived. By the time we decided to move into a high school setting, which also had a lot of its own challenges, again with multiple phone calls during the week and just trying to figure out what's going on and how the support works. And yeah, the system is just a nightmare at times for anyone that is any bit different. High school is already tough enough. Add someone in there that needs additional support and help. It's mental. As a parent, I have also had my fair share of one plans, NEPs, behavioural, this, that and the other, sit down principal meetings, big panel discussion meetings. I filled out endless amounts of paperwork and forms and surveys, and just about anything they hand to me, I fill it out on the spot and hand it back to them. So you never stop being involved in your child's education and development like any parent does, but the amount of stuff I think you do, you kind of go above and beyond what a average parent would do. I think too, you become a very strong advocate for your child. Some things you stop caring about, like if you're really frustrated, sometimes that can come across that's not always the best in a meeting, because you really want everyone on your side and working as a team. And I think that you do learn how to emotionally manage and sort of work out what the best plan and deal is. Sometimes you can win the war, but you will lose the battle. So you might win in the short term, but for the long term, it's not worth it. You can also lose a whole lot of little wars along the way, and then get to the end of, say, grade 11 for us and go, oh, we've actually won that war. So they're the little things that happen every day that you think, I'm never going to get to the end of this. And then one day you look up and suddenly realize, oh, we survived. We're here. Okay. In 2020, when the pandemic hit, it was actually a blessing for us to then be able to return to homeschooling. My son was really struggling, and we were just at our wits' end with trying to figure out what to do. So the second that the school said we have an option to homeschool, we were out the door within like 2 seconds. We had some work sent home for us, but what we focused on is the research project, which a lot of grade 11s will know about that. And we also hired a tutor for my son to come and help once a week and really engage him in some of his learning and activities. we got more work done within sort of the 6 month period that he was home with the tutor and with us than kind of what he'd been able to pump out for a whole year at school. He really thrives in a smaller one-on-one type environment, and so that is awesome for academics. However, it has meant at times with school, he's really struggled to form friendships and alliances. The problem with moving schools so often is that you don't get a lot of time to build friendships and alliances. My son doesn't really have any friends. It's just been too hard, and even some of the friendships that we've had, they've either moved or we've moved, and also, well, the kids just don't gel well, because this does happen with children that have some disabilities at times that can be issues. And also, I get so many phone calls for pickup that I'm never at the same place at the same time when it comes to forming adult friendships. I was at least acquainted with some parents that were at school when my daughter was there, but then because I was always there earlier or later for my son, you just don't see people, and I think that they just don't want to get involved. And look, I don't blame them, but I feel like saying, you know, as a parent, sometimes we're struggling and we're not asking you to come and fix the situation for us, but we just want to say to you, like, I'm really tired today, I'm really struggling because I got another phone call to come and pick up my child. There's a friend of mine, I'm not going to mention her name, but she has been such a rock to me and understands. She just sits there and listens and listens and listens. Yeah, she just knows what's going on. We went there once for a coffee and I said to her, I have to bring my son. She's like, yeah, absolutely. My son pretty much just stayed there and played like an Xbox with her son, and you know, for hours on end we didn't even hear from them. And they're just little things like that, to have another parent to sit there and go, I understand exactly what you're going through. Also with that, as a parent, when we are venting to you about, oh, I'm so frustrated, we don't want to hear, oh my God, that was like me the other day. I was at the shop, rah, rah, rah. We're just venting to you because we're overwhelmed or stressed out. We tend not to speak a lot about stuff because we get frustrated that people just don't sit there and listen to what we have to say. I used to write on Facebook sometimes, oh, I'm so overwhelmed, I've had another phone call today. And the best people would be like, sending you hugs, hope you're okay. When other people are like, oh my God, what the hell is going on this time? Or the best one ever, you need to stop writing everything on Facebook and just deal with it. Well, talk about waving a red flag to a bull. I'm here venting to whoever because I'm frustrated and upset. And no, I don't want to pick up a phone and just start speaking to people unless you know exactly what I'm talking about. I just wanted to type it out and get it out of my head. And for those people who tell me to suck it up and go and deal with it, it can be a bit frustrating. I understand that Facebook should not be your diary, but when you don't know what to do, who to turn to, or who to speak to, you just do what you do. You feel like it's the best thing to do in the time or the situation, and then you move on. We get a lot of pity from people sometimes, and it goes exactly like this. Oh my God, that must be so hard for you. My neighbor's sister's brother's nephew has a child with autism. I so know what you're going through. Thank you, I think. Or the other one you get is this, including actions. Is he at a normal school or is he like at a special school? Oh, he's at mainstream education setting. Oh, so lucky, so lucky. Oh, you're lucky he's not at one of those special schools. What does that mean? Or the best one ever, next door neighbor has one of those kids there. I'm forever hearing issues that he has. Thanks. Don't ask me how my son is going if he's at one of those special schools, and then say, oh, thank God, because next door has one of those, and I'm not interested. Okay. So yeah, if you're going to ask me a question how my child is, at least listen to my response, because it's pretty much going to be, he's doing well, thank you for asking. That's it. I'm not going to stand there and give you my life story. I need to protect myself and my emotional investment in my situation. If I know you, then I'm more than happy to discuss with you. But overall, don't panic. I'm not going to dump last week's events on you. I'm just going to say, he's doing really well, thank you. I often get asked specifically what school he's at and how well it works, and I go, he's in the best place right now for him to support his education moving forward. And they get a little bit confused because they want to know which box to put him in, a normal school or a special school. It takes too much to try and explain to people, so I just say, oh, he's doing the subjects that he requires for further study, to which they're like, oh, okay, great. But they get confused that that's not autism specific, and I think, okay, no, he's learning the subjects that he needs to move forward and live a normal life like other people. I spend a lot of time walking around with my phone in my hand, and I probably react like quick a lot more than probably what I should. But the thing is, every time I haven't answered that phone straight away and gotten to the school within 5 minutes, usually it's World War III by the time I get there. So yes, I probably created a bit of an issue for myself with so many issues that we've had, and that they've rung and known that I'll come and get him straight away because I have the ability to do so. But I just know that that's probably best for us in the situation. However, at the new school that my son's at, you know, I've had 2 phone calls all year. So it really does go to show that you need to go where the best learning and supportive environment is. My son actually has less support in some areas, and he's doing really, really well. So it is so grateful to get to the end of the tunnel and find out that the light is not the oncoming train, but the opportunity and positivity to be able to move forward. My son has an absolutely brilliant sense of humor, and it is very comical in some times and also very literal, and he can put some of his humor in perfect situations. There was an episode of Grey's Anatomy where Bailey was drunk trying to put money in a vending machine, and she says this line, "Why won't this thing take my money?" And you can say to my son, "Hey, do Bailey," and he'll just spit the line out. So it's nearly like entertainment for all. And then he went to use a vending machine with me one day, and it wasn't working, and he just turned to me quick as a flash and said, "Why won't this thing take my money?" So there are some really funny things that happen. Of course, to sit down and think about everything, my brain has gone completely blank, but they are always just so well timed and funny. Of course, having a very literal sense of humor, it can drive you up the wall a little bit. Like, we'll be driving home and I'll say, "Oh, I'm hungry," and he'll say, "Hello, hungry," and you're like, okay, thank you. All the time he says, "I got you some flowers and a card for Mother's Day," and you say, "Oh, yes." Yeah, it's 2 bags of flour he pulled out of the cupboard and a playing card. Thank you. As a family dynamic, my son has a sister who is 3 years and about 3 months older than her, and I'm so blessed to have both of them. They are both the same and polar opposite at exactly the same time, but growing up both of them together, they seem to develop their own sort of little language and connection. And it's quite funny when I think back, we haven't really had any issues with sibling rivalry. They learnt to both share very early on, and they're quite funny. They act a little bit like twins, where one goes, the other has to go. They're quite dependent on each other for some things. If I take one to the shop to get something, they'll ask if they can get something for the other. Sharing is a big thing, which also happens in this house, which is great. So if we have something, we have to make sure it gets cut up and equal. I know that I'm never going to come home and find the last piece of cheesecake missing because my son decided he was hungry. He knows who that piece is because he's had his equal share. And so we never have any issues with things disappearing because someone just wanted it more than someone else. So I'm grateful for things like that. There was a couple of years there I was sure that they both had a brain implant and had an ESP connection or something, because so often I'd get a phone call from my son's school to say he just got up and started pacing the floor, he seems really upset, and then I'd get a phone call within about 2 minutes to say your daughter stuck a chisel in her hand and now she's bleeding everywhere, or she's got a massive migraine and she's vomiting everywhere. And so it was just kind of like neither one of them had mobile phones. It's not like they could have called each other and say, let's stage a coup. So for a couple of years there, it seemed very weird that what would happen to one would happen to the other, and they were always like interconnected. You learn to multitask a lot with life and also with food, which I'm going to do a separate video about. But learning to cook multiple meals per night, because there are different sensory and texture and dietary needs and just other factors to come into play. I tend just to go into robot mode when some of these things come up, and I just go into automatic. I think I've been doing it for so long now, I don't sort of focus too much on, oh, I have to cook dinner. I do say to myself, I get the opportunity to cook dinner, make sure everyone's fed and happy and they're eating what they eat. So when I get some criticism on other videos, hey, you don't have this or that on the plate, I think, yeah, because my children don't want to eat it. I'm not going to sit there and make them eat broccoli if they don't want to, or anything that they struggle with as a texture, because then that means if they get upset, then they don't eat, and then if they don't eat, then we have gut issues down the track. And it is just not worth it to make sure that my meals look pretty for social media. So my children are fed and happy at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what I should be doing, as long as I'm not doing anything that's like illegal or really bad. My son has a very black and white view of the world at times, which can be very helpful in some situations. If we get somewhere and he's had enough, I can usually just say, we're done, we're out of here, and I don't need to really spend a whole lot of time apologizing. It can work in the opposite direction at times though, that my son can get really gung-ho and excited to do something, and by the time we get there, if something's changed or hasn't gone the right way, he has so much anxiety that he doesn't want to get involved. He tends to be a all or nothing person, so he wanted to do some volleyball stuff earlier this year, and he wanted to get part of a uniform and a bag and a ball and all this, and I was like, let's just go for a trial and see how we go and what's going on. So that frustrated him a little bit, that he couldn't be fully kitted out and decked. But as I said, I'm not going to buy all that kind of stuff if you're not interested and involved. And then the first trial that we went to, he got anxiety and just sat there and watched for the entire time. So he just like, here we go. And I know that anxiety is a big thing. I'm not here to put it off, but you know, as a parent, you're just like, here's another thing that he really, really wants to do. Just unfortunately, the anxiety has gotten the better for him at the time. So again, here's another delay in something. We hopefully will eventually get to what we want to do, but for now, it's just another learning step. Like a lot of children, my son has some special interests, and he's gone through lots of things that he likes. So of course it was trains when he was younger. Now he really likes Yu-Gi-Oh and K-pop music and lots of things. He has great sense of humor, as I said, so he finds some things very funny for TV shows, and he likes to get involved and interested in anything that he enjoys, which is just totally normal. You can, however, end up spending a lot of money as a parent of a child with autism with all of the things they want to do. But then, unfortunately, due to their anxiety or any other issues, they don't always come to fruition to be able to enjoy or engage. And you've already forked out some money for this thing, and it doesn't always happen. We started with a little bowling club, and you'd rock up and pay your money, and then within 10 minutes something's happened and we've had to go home. So sometimes we would get refunded the $6, or they'd hold it for next week. It depends who's on the desk. Other times they would say, sorry, we can't. We spend a lot of money on things that we find can be very wasteful at times. Food is a big factor. If we order some food as a takeaway and it doesn't look the way it should or whatever, then they choose not to eat it. So it got to the point that I would go somewhere, order his meal. If he didn't want it, then I would eat it, so I wouldn't worry about buying my own meal. I would just have his and then go and get something else, or he would just choose not to eat, which then adds into all the other issues that I talked about before. So we have a lot of waste with that. People want to ask specifically what type of autism that your child has. They only know of two types. It's either the severely autistic, where they can't do anything, or they're Rain Man. Are they like Rain Man, or are they like Sheldon from the Big Bang Theory? And it can get a little bit frustrating, and you just have to explain, my son is my son, it's who he is. And they kind of go, yeah, but is he like Sheldon? Does he do things like that? Like, they always want to connect you with someone from a TV show or something, and it can be a bit weird. My son is not Rain Man. He has a lot of special interests with things. He enjoys watching the Big Bang Theory. We find it very funny. We find some of the things that Sheldon does absolutely hilarious. We've used Sheldon as a case study in some of my son's psych sessions to look at social norms and how Sheldon has reacted and the things that he's done, the things that maybe he shouldn't done. Sheldon has been a huge education tool for us within a society, so we're very grateful for that. But your child is your child. You just need to have that's what it is. Don't always try and label or connect them to something. My son can be Rain Man if Tom Cruise comes with him, but I don't see him here anytime soon. We have a lot of schedules and systems and routines in our house which work for everybody, not just for my son, and then that way everybody is on the same page. Everybody understands what's going on, what time we need to leave for school, what time we're expected back home, how things work, what is on what day, etc., etc. So then if anything needs to happen and someone needs the help, then everything is there, picked up, ready to go. It also helps my son learn some skills with time reading and learning how to get himself available, so I'm not constantly like 5 minutes until we leave. I'm not having to do the nagging. I think it's important as a parent to anybody that you teach your children some independent skills. It's great to be a mama bear, absolutely, and having a child with autism, you do tend to be a little bit more hands-on with some things, but there are some situations where they want to learn to be independent, and you need to just let them. You're there to catch them if they fall, but they do need to sort of learn and make a few little mistakes along the way. But giving them some of the little tools to help them learn and develop their own systems and routines is going to help them ultimately being independent and having their own life skills as well. The last thing I just wanted to mention to you guys is that as a parent of a child with autism, that is the definition that my son wishes to be addressed by. I have a friend whose daughter says that she prefers to be addressed as autistic. So please speak to the parent or the child if they're capable to communicate with you and ask them how they want to be addressed. Their name is usually the first thing. Anyone with a disability wants to be respected and addressed as a person first with a disability. My son will say that he has autism, it doesn't have him, whereas other people say they are autistic because that's the mannerisms and the lifestyle that they have. One is not better than the other, right, wrong, whatever. That's the other thing too. You're going to have a lot of discussions and advocacy and issues in groups. You just say, you do you, I'll do me, and whatever ends up in the middle, so be it. Let's agree to disagree. I'm a parent, you're a parent, we both have issues, que sera, sera, whatever. There is no point trying to fight to the death what is correct. As I say all the time in some of the Facebook groups I'm in, my child was diagnosed and given a diagnosis way back when labels and levels and all of that was super important. Not so much today, but you need to respect the fact that that's what we know. We are learning and developing and growing and doing the best we can to develop to society, but also please don't stand there and dictate to us how things should be. We're all doing the best that we can, so if there's anything that you take away from it, your autism experience is going to be completely different to mine. There'll be a few things that are similar, but we just need to live our lives and be a supportive community to everybody and accept everybody where they're at. There are some parents who are very, very new to this journey, so when they come into some Facebook groups, they'll ask a question. Sometimes they'll get attacked by other people, and I'm like, hold your horses. They don't know. They're just asking because they don't know. So let's please be kind and let's think before we respond how best we can give them some information to help support them, or for them to go and research and develop and get some help that will support their situation, not tell them what's right or wrong. Well, thank you so much for watching today, guys. I so appreciate your time. I've talked for a really long time. I hope that you have enjoyed my experience and just a little bit of an insight into some of the challenges and the very weird things that happen within our house. It is a journey and an adventure, absolutely. I would not change it for the world. I would not be the person that I am today without being on this journey. I have learnt and seen so much, still with so much more to go. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to leave me a comment below or ask me a question, please feel free to do so. I ask that you be kind in your replies, and I will also treat you with a kindness. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm going to try and do a little bit more content around autism, how it works in our household, especially with some of the food and how I work that out. So I look forward to sharing that with you. Until next time, I'll see you then. Bye.